Well, good morning. It's Saturday, kind of a different thing, but this is what I thought I'd try this and see how it worked. I am a fan of the Epoch Times, and I watch a lot of their videos, a lot of their videos that aren't on YouTube. If you go to theepochtimes.com, you can get access to a lot of the Truth Matters videos. And this is an article based on one of the Truth Matters videos done by Roman about climate change. Now, I've already gotten a note on my last video about climate change. I imagine I will get a note on this one too. But I think that it is interesting to talk about this, because we really have to talk about looking at things not just from a sensationalist, alarmist viewpoint, but really looking at climate change for what it is, really delving into the science, not being scared away because you're not a climatologist. In the same way that we shouldn't have been scared away from COVID because you were an immunologist. The data is understandable, and it is nuanced, and we're going to talk about that. So I wanted to, at the onset, tell you where I got a lot of this information from, and get you to do too. You can find this video that I got this information from on YouTube. As a matter of fact, Truth Matters, and it's about climate data bias. All right, let's start it. Let's talk about the divergence in climate science opinions. It is increasingly common to hear that our planet is spiraling into crisis due to rising temperatures, but not all scientists agree on the severity or even the validity of this narrative. During a speech at the World Economic Forum, your boy Al Gore proclaimed that greenhouse gas emissions trap as much extra heat as 600,000 Hiroshima-class bombs exploding daily. Similarly, the UN Secretary General echoed a dire message stating that our planet is, quote, on the brink due to human-induced climate change. However, these pronouncements starkly contrast with opinions from other respected members of the scientific community. Remember they tell us, follow the science? Let's do that. John Clauser, a Nobel laureate in physics, describes the popular climate change narrative as, quote, a dangerous corruption of science, end quote. He believes that what we often encounter is more akin to shock journalism pseudoscience. Clauser's concerns are shared by Stephen Koonin, who is a former Undersecretary of Science at the U.S. Department of Energy. He has pointed out that there's a growing chasm between what politicians, the media, and the non-governmental organizations, we're going to refer to those as NGOs, were saying, and what the science actually said. The crux of their argument is the narrative propagated by political and media entities does not accurately reflect the scientific reports. This discrepancy demands a deeper investigation into why these divergent perspectives exist and what they signify for our understanding of climate change. All right, now, part of this is there is a bias in scientific research and the journals. One scientific issue that critics highlight as the bias inherent in scientific research in journals. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, you probably already heard of them, and they were established by the UN, so in my view that makes them suspect, and the World Meteorological Association. So anything that has world or intergovernmental sus from the GUS. Assemble scientific reports into these thick assessment documents for global consumption. While seemingly objective, these reports often have a bias baked into them from the start. You're going to ask me how. Research grants, because that's the deal, are typically awarded to studies that support the prevailing climate change narrative, and journals are reluctant to publish dissenting opinions. This creates a self-reinforcing loop where only alarmist studies receive funding and publication, as captured succinctly by Professor William Happer from Princeton University. Here's what Dr. Happer said. He said this: any literature that supports alarmism is promoted, and any that does not is rejected. This policy not only stifles scientific debate, but also results in a skewed representation of climate data. Richard Lindzen, an MIT professor who has served at the IPCC, criticized the organization for focusing solely on anthropogenic climate change, ignoring natural climate variability. All they do is they have focused on man-made climate change, and that's all they do, the IPCC, that's all they do. He says this: you can't do things like attribution unless you know what natural variability is. So you can't just say it's this unless you know how things happen naturally. Here's another point: questionable reliability of the climate models. We hear so much about in 5 years we'll all be dead. In 12 years it's too late. Now all of this is based on models. Well, another focal point of critique is reliability of the climate models that are used to predict future scenarios. These models, which maybe climate policies are based on, are described by some experts as fundamentally flawed. For instance, Professor Koonin points out that the IPCC's models often diverge wildly. The average surface temperatures generated by the models vary amongst themselves by around 3 degrees Celsius. Moreover, models undergo a, quote, tuning process to fit historical data better. They're cooking the books. This process involves adjusting hundreds of parameters to account for unpredictable elements like cloud formation and humidity. The result, however, is a model that may fit past data but fail to provide reliable future predictions. Koonin elaborates: the models often fail to reproduce historical temperatures. They also struggle to separate human influence from the natural phenomena. And that's what we've talked about a second ago, natural variability. The implications of relying on such models are profound. Policies formed on the basis of these models could lead to significant economic repercussions without delivering expected environmental benefits. This has led critics to question whether the dire predictions often highlighted by climate models should serve as the basis for sweeping policy changes. Should we take these models that may be suspect to start with and build policy upon it and then move forward with them, as if these models are historically correct? And what we found out is that what they can't do is produce anything historically close to historic. So here's the real-world impact on these narratives. What ultimately emerges from this discourse is layered understanding of the real-world implications of climate narratives. Even with the IPCC's own reports, there is, quote, a low confidence regarding increased and extreme weather events like floods, cyclones, droughts linked to man-made climate change. And we hear all the time, because of man-made climate change, the hurricanes there's more hurricanes, there are more tornadoes, there's more everything bad. Even they say this really, that may not be true. Observations from other institutions also debunk commonly held notions. For instance, NOAA's 30 years analysis of tornado trends found that the number of strong and violent tornadoes hasn't varied much since 1970. The U.S. EPA's Drought Severity Index shows no material increase in droughts in the United States between 1895 and 2020. Yet, the political and media landscapes paint a dramatically different picture. Summarized reports and press releases by the IPCC often propagate a narrative of imminent apocalypse. As Koonin states, the media have to cover that, and they typically will cherry-pick the most extreme parts of it. So that's how we get the distortions. This disparity has tangible consequences. Again, policies based on climate alarmism, such as these proposed used under agreements like the Paris Accords, could lead to massive economic costs. The analysis by the Heritage Foundation suggests that reaching the Biden administration's climate goals could result in the loss of $7.7 trillion in GDP in the United States by 2040. These costs include higher prices for food, and we've already seen enough of that, due to decreased agricultural productivity, and more people living in poverty due to restricted access to affordable energy. Figures like MIT's Professor Lindzen warn this: the billions of people who don't have energy, who don't have modern conveniences, will be condemned to perpetual poverty. Because CO2 has played an important role in increasing agricultural productivity. Why? Because plants eat CO2. So we'll see everyone paying more for food and more people starving. Despite these data points, questioning the prevailing narratives subjects individuals to labels like climate denier. This is political rhetoric, as seen in statements by leaders like our President Joe Biden, who often conflate skepticism with dangerous ignorance. We saw this during COVID, further stifling meaningful scientific debate. When distilling the underlying data from various reports and the studies, a nuanced picture emerges. Although there has been modest warming, about 1.3 degrees Celsius, since the 1900s, the metrics of human well-being, such as lifespan, GDP, continue to trend positively. Sea level rise remains at a steady, roughly at a foot per century, rising a foot per century. Per 100 years, a foot. This much in 100 years. And the economic impacts of this warming are minor compared to the other determinants of human welfare. The implications of perpetuating a one-sided narrative are extensive and multifaceted. Not only does it perpetuate a culture of fear, but it also diverts resources and attention from other critical issues. As debates on climate continue to unfold, it is essential to question, scrutinize, analyze the evidence critically, ensuring that policies are grounded in robust, unbiased scientific and not driven by sensationalism or political agendas. This is hard for us because, you know what, we love the drama. I trust that what we've done here today has caused you to think. Please make comments in the comment section. Again, this show, this thing I shared with you today was based on a video by the Epic Times. Roman's doing his series called Truth Matters. That's what this is based on. Information I got from that. And I'll link the video down in the description box. We got to get out of here and make room for somebody else. So until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.